Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. Welcome to Tridge's webinar titled Building Agricultural Resilience During Periods of Uncertainty. I'm your host, Ben Lategan. We have a wide array of people here today from various sectors of the agricultural industry. And we welcome you all from wherever you're joining us from, whatever time zone it is. I know we have people from all across the globe here, and we're really excited to be for Bojan to be presenting a great presentation today, and we welcome a lively discussion. Before we move forward, I quickly want to talk about Tridge's intelligence and data division. So as an intelligence and sourcing provider, we deliver the most timely and valid information and analysis on the agricultural industry, as we have a global network of experts in various sectors across the globe engaging in the agricultural industry. And our intelligence includes daily analysis on price, regulations, production, seasonality, and more to help our clients understand the market and improve their decision-making skills. If you have any further interest in our intelligence and data services, please visit our website for more information or reach out and we can get back to you. Before we get started with the presentation, let's just run through some technical points. For the most optimal viewing experience, click on the View Options menu in WebEx and then enable side-by-side view so you can view the presentation and the presenters at the same time. If you need any technical assistance throughout the webinar, please reach out in the chat and a Tridge team member will get back to you and sort out a technical issue that you might have. We also have real-time translation and transcription services in English and Spanish, French, and German. To enable that, click on the closed captions and then select the closed captions option or the translation option, and then select the language you wish to use. And then during the webinar, if you have any questions, please reach out in the chat and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. If we don't get to them, we'll put together the answers and we'll get back to you afterwards. I think everybody's muted from our side, but please just check, make sure that you are muted for the duration of the webinar. For this webinar, we will also be providing a certificate of attendance for those who requested, and more information will be available at the end of the webinar for that. And it will also be there's a survey at the end, and if you complete the survey for us, you will get a certificate of attendance as well. A bit more information will be in the follow-up email, I think, and at the end of the webinar. So today we will be covering risks in agriculture. We will be looking at strategies to increase resilience in agriculture, and then that will be followed by a panel discussion. So our presenter will be looking at risks in agriculture, we'll be discussing the strategies to increase resilience in agriculture, and then we will have a panel discussion afterwards. So I have already briefly introduced myself, but I'm your host. I'm Ben Lategan. I'm a global market analyst at Tridge. I function in the fulfillment assetization division of Tridge, where we collect, we curate, and we distribute daily market updates. So we keep you guys up to date with what's happening on the ground in the various markets that we function in. And then meeting our panelists, we have Ferhat Erdem, our global fulfillment manager from Turkey. And then we have Givoanni Causapruno from xFarm joining us today. Now, Giovanni's he's the AgriFood business unit manager at xFarm. He has a PhD in engineering and an MBA. He's worked in highly innovative companies ranging from software engineering, from innovation management and consultancy. And after some experience in tech companies such as Magneti Marelli, and Microsoft, he entered the agri-OEM market, working for the SDF Group, and he now leads the AgriFood business unit in xFarm Technologies. And he's supporting food companies in the digital transformation of their supply chains from field sustainable farming. I will give each panelist a chance to introduce themselves right before the panel discussion. Right now, I'm going to give over to our presenter, Bojan, to introduce himself and jump directly into the webinar. Bojan, over to you.
Thank you, Ben. Hello, everyone. Once again, thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Bojan Mijatovic, and I'm a global marketer here at Tridge, with specialty in fruits and vegetables. My professional expertise is an agriculture engineer and crop protection, and also organic production. So we can start with the presentation, Ben. First part of the presentation will be risks in agriculture, and the second part will be building resilience with a special focus on sustainability. So, risks in agriculture. Risk is an important aspect of the farming business. Main factors that are impacting farm income are weather, climatic factors, yields, production, prices, especially uncertainty about the prices producers will receive for commodities or the prices they must pay for inputs. The nature of price risks varies significantly from commodity to commodity. Government policies results from uncertainties surrounding government restrictions and actions, tax laws, regulations for chemical use, rules for animal waste disposal, and the level of price or income support payments are examples of government decisions that can have a major impact on the farm businesses. Global markets, global demand, and global supply is driving the prices and trade. Other factors may include farmers' well-being, farmers' health on the farm. So the global population is rising, is expected to increase from roughly 7.7 billion to nearly 10 billion by 2050. And demand for cereals, example, to be used as both for food, human and animal, may grow to roughly 3 billion tons by that point, from about 2 billion in 2009. Agricultural system must better address climate change, water and land resources that are becoming scarce, and increasingly volatile food prices as they seek to feed a growing global population. A lack of resilience amplifies the impact of shocks like food price spikes. Can move on to the next slide, please. So, how is the weather anomaly correlated to the prices? Price rise and decrease depending on the anomaly and its impact. Decreased nutrition and food safety are also one of the causes of the weather anomalies. Increased pressure on limited resources like soil, water, and air worsened farm working conditions. Limited land availability as consequences of the weather anomalies. Some examples are the celery price in California, which increased in July 2022. The driving factor for the higher celery price was the ongoing drought and the water restrictions in Southern California. In China, we have an example of a kiwi fruit production where the wholesale price increased in July. Heat waves at Shaanxi from June to July negatively affected the kiwi fruit production. Fewer kiwis available led to increased prices in July 2022. Also, the wholesale price of the Muscat Hamburg grape variety in France plummeted in the Rungis wholesale market. The price decrease was due to the lower quality and size of the harvest after heat waves with intensive droughts and in summer months. Next slide, please. So, regarding the production and yield and its price correlation, lower production yields caused by various factors like weather, lack of or high prices of input, labor issues, etc., leads to higher prices of commodities. Higher prices of food are one of the main drivers of currency inflation. On the other hand, high production leads to lower prices. We have an example in Spain where the price of lemon has increased in the first week of October. Lesser production of Spanish lemon was driving the price up. Also, there was a less Spanish lemon available, and the other example is the Nigerian sorghum production, which the price decreased because of the increased production. This is owing to the anticipated increase in Nigerian sorghum production, coupled with lower production costs. Next slide, please, Ben. So moving on to government policies and how they can impact of price and risks in agriculture. Government policies have strong impact on trade, both positively and negatively. Agriculture policy heavily influences farmers' decisions. Regulatory and policy incentives can also improve sustainability through investments in new technologies. For example, in Peru, the wholesale price of US imported asparagus dropped by almost 24% month on month. Why was this? Because of the new regulation between the US and Peru, which allowed pest mitigation measures without fumigation with methyl bromide, which lowered the cost for farmers. And this benefited smaller producers as they can improve and export of Peruvian asparagus to the US. This was a positive effect of the government policies. On the other side, the cold treatment regulation, which came into effect on July 14, 2022, marks a game changer in South African exports to Spain, but in EU overall. More on this topic can be found on our platform. Next slide, please, Ben. So global markets. Global demand and supply is driving the prices. Also, some of the topics of sustainability is to buy locally. But for some products, this is not possible. For example, coffee. Coffee is not grown everywhere in the world, but it's traded almost in every part of the country globally. Also, lessons learned from the COVID-19 showed that pandemic caused logistical disruptions, broken value chains, and caused all imbalances in trades. Capital markets have a massive role in addressing sustainability. Some of the examples in our platform included the wholesale price of corn in Brazil, which seen an upward trend in October. The reason for the price increase was because of the firm demand in the international markets. Also, another example for COVID-19 impact in trade. In China, COVID-19 during the pandemic led to renewed enforcement of its zero COVID border control policy. Malaysia, importing fresh garlic from China, experienced higher prices of fresh garlic because sufficient volumes could not be imported from China, resulting in a supply shortage. When we are talking about coffee, in Vietnam, coffee prices have climbed 11% month on month because of international shortages and concerns about supply shortages from producing markets. We can move to the next slide, please, Ben. So how are production risks impacting big agricultural producers? In US, weather, extreme weather anomalies and continuous impact agri-input and prices, droughts, heavy rains and floods, hailstorms, early and late frost, extreme weather becoming a new normal. According to the National Centers for Environmental Information, weather climate disaster event losses exceeded $1 billion before Hurricane Ian. Orange production in Florida and cereals in Charleston and South Carolina were most affected by severe storms and heavy rainfalls of Hurricane Ian. Due to adverse weather conditions and natural disasters, agriculture suffers. Direct losses in agricultural production often threaten economic stability, especially for underdeveloping countries. Next slide, please, Ben. So how was it in European Union? 2022 marked a heavy drought with high temperatures in European production. Frequency and intensity of extreme hot weather will have long-term outlook effects for EU agriculture. Severe agricultural losses due to extreme heat impacts economies. Between 1980 and 2000, heat waves in 32 European countries amounted up to $71 billion. This is shifting agricultural production. Temperatures dictates possibility of change in traditional agricultural regions. South Europe and Mediterranean region are most affected. Extreme droughts and high temperatures in July, thank you, Ben. In July and August severely affected corn production in France. According to the French Ministry of Agriculture, expected quantities in the ongoing harvest were around 11.6 million metric tons, representing a 25% year-on-year decrease. With less corn production, the EU imports are expected to rise to meet the increasing demand. These negative effects of climate change are mounting much faster than scientists predicted less than a decade ago. The warnings are dire, with rising global temperatures of more than 1.5 Celsius degrees above the pre-industrial levels. This will result in permanent and potential catastrophic changes to our agriculture markets. Next slide, please. Production risks in China concerning the weather. This is long-term influence of climate change in China. Climate change possesses a significant threat to China's agriculture. Rising sea levels and the risk related to coastal flooding, storm surges, and coastal erosion. This all impacts the changes in the gross domestic products. Impact on rural population in interior provinces in northern and western China. Estimations are that losses from natural hazards averaged $76 billion over the past 5 years. Without adequate mitigation and adaptation efforts, climate risk will become a growing constraint to China's long-term growth and prosperity, threatening to reverse development gains. Conversely, if efforts to tackle climate risk lead to a significant decline in growth and rising inequality, this would deprive millions of people of development and likely erode support for the reforms necessary to achieve a lasting economic transformation in China. Next slide, please, Ben. So, sustainability development in China. It's highly regulated by their own government policy for agriculture. But remarkably, China provides food for 22% of world's population. But this also has severe environmental impacts. Agricultural policies have direct or indirect impacts on environmental outcomes. Technology and institutional innovation in China integration is also becoming more important because China invests a lot in its agriculture. Of course, expansion and intensification of agriculture production, which is needed in China to feed the population, is having also a high impact on environment in China. Relationship between policies for the agriculture and the environment are pictured in the graph on the right side. We can move to the next slide, Ben. So moving on to the really most important part of the risk is agriculture that all farmers can relate globally. Higher input and higher labor costs. Higher input prices are affecting sustainable production, risk of food shortages, limited incentives to increase production. Because agriculture heavily depends on fossil fuels, it is also related to oil prices. Fertilizer and oil price indices are in a downfall trend, but the prices are still way up comparing to the beginning of the 2021 year. In US, high labor shortages are affecting the agriculture production. US Department of Agriculture marked lack of labor as one of the most substantial agricultural risks in season 2022. Large amounts of nitrogen required for plant and livestock production result in agricultural activities being the main driver of the nitrogen cycle. Several studies also reveal that low nitrogen use efficiency in crops, only approximately half of the nitrogen applied to cropland is incorporated into plant biomass, while the remains are lost through leaching, soil erosion, and gaseous emissions. Regarding the phosphate, phosphorus is mined from the ground to use to fertilizers and is there in manures. This improves soil and replenishes what is removed when crops are harvested. Human activities have profoundly changed the global phosphorus cycle, primarily through mining rock phosphate to produce phosphorus fertilizer for agricultural uses. Indications are that 90% of global phosphate production, this is around 148 million tons of phosphate rock per year, is used to make fertilizers for agriculture. This is just an example how humans are changing the environment. So the phosphorus is mainly used for agricultural purposes. With increased global demand for food due to rising population numbers and changing diets, demand for phosphorus could increase by 50 to even 100% by 2050, leading to even greater impact of agriculture on the environment. Next slide, please, Ben. So, dealing with agriculture policies, are there an obstacle or a solution? Depends. Global initiative of the United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals, were established in 2015 by the international community as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, through which countries of the world agreed collectively to eradicate poverty, human hunger, find sustainable and inclusive development solutions to ensure everyone's human rights. 17 Sustainable Development Goals have been defined, with 169 associated targets. Agriculture, as one of the main Sustainable Development Goals, correlates with all of them. One significant challenge sustainable farmers face is growing enough food for the world's increasing population. In EU, European Green Deal, goal is to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions within the EU and deliver a pollution-free environment by 2050. Advances in transport, agricultural systems, and ecosystems and biodiversity are all required through the European Green Deal, as well as efforts to further develop a circular economy that ensures products can be reused and recycled. What are the obstacles of the Green Deal? The major agri-food exporters to the EU, under conditions of the European Green Deal, have a high threat regarding reduction of their supply to the member states in the case of a possible carbon border adjustment mechanism, or the introduction of the other import restriction mechanism in the future. Ukraine war was set to delay EU sustainable farming plans, but who knows for how long. Currently, farmers in the EU are struggling with the Green Deal regulation due to increased costs for packaging materials, machines, ban of plastics, and also the lack of pesticide used for the crop protection of their agricultural commodities. We can move on to the next one, Ben. Greenhouse gas emissions, China, EU, and US. China greenhouse gas emissions. Agricultural and land use related emissions, including from forestry and ecosystem services, account for 6% of total emissions. Positive side in China, agricultural greenhouse gases are decreasing. In EU, ambitious Green Deal was made, but plan is to reduce emissions by 5% in 2030. Between 2005 and 2019, EU's agricultural greenhouse gas emissions changed very little. In US, in 2020, greenhouse gas emissions from the agricultural economic sector accounted for 11% of total US greenhouse emissions. The top 5 countries that are emitting GHGs are China, United States, India, Russia, and Japan. How does greenhouse gases affect the agriculture? Changes in the ozone, greenhouse gases and climate change affect agricultural producers greatly because agriculture and fisheries depend on specific climatic conditions. Temperature changes can cause habitat ranges and crop planting dates to shift, and droughts and floods due to climate change may hinder farming practices. Next slide, please, Ben. We are moving to the second part of our presentations as strategies to increase resilience in agriculture. What is resilience? We define resilience of a farming system as its ability to ensure the provision of the system functions in the face of increasingly complex and accumulating economic, social, environmental, and institutional shocks and stresses through capacities of robustness, adaptability, and transformability, ensuring that the agricultural and food system are productive, and risk sensitive in order to feed present and future generations. This is just a few goals that sustainability aims: improve food production, improved environmental health, high production benefits and low-cost production, minimization of off-site environmental impacts, optimize resource usage and conservation, and reduced environmental risk. Next slide, please, man. So, what can we do? Agriculture needs to be more resilient to the uncertainties ahead. Some of the sustainable agriculture approaches: crop rotation, cover crops, no-till agriculture, low or high-tech precision farming. Crop rotation and other urban agriculture and other methods that are here on the presentation. But I will face crop rotation is the most important part. Improved prediction of crop fertilizer nitrogen requirements, timing of nitrogen and placement, along with strategy to recoup nitrogen losses are all the currently available practices that can sustainably reduce nitrogen use. Several also options are to reduce usage of phosphorus. The most systemic options revolve around using less new mined phosphorus. For this, one option is to balance phosphorus budgets on agriculture soil, and another is to increase use of recycled phosphorus from manure, human excreta, and food residues to reduce reliance on new mined phosphorus. Some of the methods we can use are better tillage practices, establishing and maintaining riparian buffers, and restoring wetland areas. Agriculture is and will continue to be the largest consumer of fresh water globally. Although the quantity of water used per unit of food produced has almost halved since 1961, the potential to increase water use efficiency in agriculture remains substantial. Water management, policy reforms, and infrastructure investments can all contribute to increasing efficiency and lowering consumption. Water use for irrigation can be lowered by increasing conveyance efficiency, taking water from the source to the farm, distribution efficiency from farm to field, and application efficiency. Reducing food waste is also important, in storage or in aftermarket waste, so the less to be produced is an urgent need. Reduced meat and dairy consumption is likely to be crucial. High-tech solutions may involve breeding cattle for lower methane emissions and modifying crop quality to improve the efficiency of post-farm gate food chain activities. What can Tridge do and its role in providing value chain insights for agriculture topics? As Ben mentioned, Tridge's strength is providing that value chain insight for agriculture topics are up to date and clear. We deliver the most timely and valid information and analysis on the agriculture industry, as we have global networks of experts actively engaging in the industry. Our intelligence includes daily analysis on price, regulation, production, seasonality, weather data, local insights, and more to help our clients understand the market and improve their decision-making skills. Next slide, please, Ben. Ecological intensification of agriculture, different methods, same goals. These are also some of the methods that are being used today, like organic farming, agroecology, and regenerative agriculture. This is different methods, but the same goal is to lower the impact on the environment of the agriculture. Enhance and sustain the health of the soil by restoring the organic matter, boosting its fertility and productivity. We can move on to the next slide then. How is EU coping with sustainable development? Sustainable and resilient farming. EU is implementing agroecological approaches. Agroecological approaches can help farmers to develop more sustainable and resilient farming systems that combine stable yields with enhanced biodiversity and ecosystem services. This allows farmers to reduce external inputs and costs while improving the health and resilience of plants and animals. Different types of farming systems are using agroecological approaches across Europe. Some of these focuses on diversification, including agroforestry, mixed crop livestock systems, or crop rotation and diversification to increase productivity and resource efficiency and create new market opportunities. The lucerne or alfalfa is being tested in Slovenia for its resistance to drought. One of the project aims in Europe in Slovenia is to test the potential of such conserved feed to adapt livestock production to climate change. The project is also exploring whether the production of lucerne can be increased because it delivers stable yields and its mixtures may be best suited for conservation. It also assesses feeding value and fermentation quality of the tillage that is produced. In Italy, another example, farmers around Po River are dealing with plant pests and diseases and managing weeds in a sustainable way. Non-chemical management techniques, including crop rotation and diversification, intercropping, reduced tillage, cover crops, mechanical weed control, and precision weeding can help prevent or control weeds. Better soil structure and soil health can increase resilience to outbreaks of pests and disease. This can help decrease farmers' dependence on external inputs and support stable yields. Finally, digital solutions, such as user-friendly decision support tools, can support farmers to manage their crops and animals more efficiently. Digital platforms can connect farmers to others in the chain to share data and knowledge for optimizing short supply chains. Can move on to the next slide. How's the situation in India? In India, they're developing climate smart agriculture in an approach that helps guide actions to transform agri-food system towards green and climate resilient practices. Why are changes needed? High methane emission, greenhouse gases emission due to paddy rice cultivation, yield reduction. In India, medium term, from 2010 to 2039, climate change is predicted to reduce yields by 4.5 to 9%, depending on the magnitude and distribution of the warming. Since agriculture makes up roughly 16% of India's GDP, a 4.5 to 9% negative impact would translate into roughly 1.5% of GDP per year down. So this is important for India's agriculture and economics. How they are trying to implement sustainability through policy revisions. There is a need to revisit policies to subsidize power and fertilizers in India and reorient farmers towards minimizing greenhouse gas emissions. Carbon market also create policy. It must be aligned with climate objectives and ensure that open trade plays its role as an adaptation mechanism without impeding mitigation objectives. Collaboration between farmers and the government. Another interesting topic is a direct seeded rice, in which rice seeds are sown and grown directly into the field instead of the need for puddling in water. Is increasingly being explored as a climate mitigation strategy to cut back on greenhouse gas emissions associated with the volume of water required to grow traditional varieties in flooded fields. Move on to the next one. In US, California is implementing also climate smart agriculture. California is a high value agriculture sector that contributes substantially to nutritional diversity in the country and to national exports. Environmental impacts, particulates from fertilizer and dust, nitrate leaching, and substantial water consumption impacts on health and water quality. Agriculture, as a major use of fresh water, is challenging sustainable water withdrawal and supply. California has intensive agriculture. How they are fighting sustainability towards implementing sustainability? By incentives, lower taxes, subsidies, and new tools and technologies that are driving continuous improvement in the agriculture sector in California. We can move on to the next slide, please, Ben. China tries natural-based solutions to implement sustainability. This includes enhancing climate resilience and adaptation to rural landscapes and urban areas. Policy framework for agriculture is being changed. Increase the use of nature-based solutions. Use scientific and meteorological information to inform water use and water resource planning. Accelerate forestry sector reform. Reorienting eco compensations. Repurpose the public sector support to agriculture to support low carbon land use and promote the reuse of agricultural waste. Still, a lot of job is left to be done in China. Livestock, synthetic fertilizer use, and rice paddies are the largest sources of agricultural greenhouse gas emissions in China. China is also well positioned to turn climate action into economic opportunity. Reduced carbon intensity and climate adaptation in China unlocks new resources for economic growth, innovation, and job creation. So China sees this as an opportunity, with the added benefit of lowering China's reliance on imported fuels and enhancing its energy security. This was all from me, Ben. Thank you all for participating, and if you have any questions, please address it in chat.
Bojan, thank you very much for that insightful presentation. I'm sure we all learned a lot. I definitely learned a lot about sustainability in agriculture. Thank you. Before we move on to the panel discussion, I'm going to ask the two panelists to briefly introduce themselves before we move on. I want to ask Ferhat, will you go first, and then give over to Givoanni to just briefly introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we can jump into the panel discussion.
Of course, Ben. And Bojan, thanks for excellent presentation. Yeah, I'm responsible for global sourcing in Tridge in Global Fulfillment Department. And I've been in agri-food sector for more than 15 years. And in the past, I also manage food-grade plastic recycling company. And I'm holding a BSc degree in electronics and engineering.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you can hear me well. And nice to meet you. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much, Bojan, for the presentation. Very, very interesting. I am Givoanni Causapruno. I am the AgriFood Business Unit Manager at xFarm. I'll introduce xFarm in a while, but just to let you know, it's a company, tech company, focused in digitalization in agriculture. So we'll be discussing about digital in agriculture. I'm an engineer, background engineer, all the way through the PhD in electronic engineering. But then I got in love with the agri-food tech sector. So I started working first in tech companies like Microsoft, tractor companies like xFarm Group, one of the leading group in the world. And then I decided to join xFarm 1.5 years ago. And my role in xFarm as AgriFood Business Unit Manager is to support food companies in the rollout of digital transformation projects of their supply chain involving farmers all around the world.
All right, thank you very much, guys, for the introductions. Let's move on to the first question. How can farmers or farms be connected to technology that allow us to monitor sustainability in agriculture? Givoanni, do you mind going first and giving us your take?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give a brief introduction before this. I do believe that connecting farmers to the supply chain is the key topic when we're talking about food resilience and food sustainability. So as we saw before, there are these two main topics that are trending. The sustainability is very important. Coming from Italy, Europe, we see a lot, and we saw how the European Green Deal is taking a lot of topics that farmers have to address regarding sustainability, as well as with what we saw with the war now and with the changing climate conditions. The resilience of the food supply chain system is under pressure. So why it's important to connect farmers and monitor sustainability and monitor resilience? Well, I do believe that I usually take this example. We can treat it as a boat. So a boat, when it's navigating in difficult times, the best way to manage is to take the compass and know exactly the direction where they have to go. And especially in difficult weather conditions, in storms, this is the kind of activity that needs to be deployed to take the correct route. And in the same way, when we're talking about food resilience and food sustainability, we need to have a master route north to follow. And in order to understand it, we need to know where we are going. So our compass is understanding where farmers are going in terms of sustainability. For example, we talked about the GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, or in general CO2 consumption. And then this comes to the question, so how do we trace in a sustainable and efficient way what farmers are doing in field for sustainability? And the only way to make it happen is to deep dive a technology at farmers level, because we want to achieve primary data. We want to know exactly what farmers are doing in their field in terms of what are they putting in the field, which kind of crop rotation are they managing, what kind of regenerative agriculture practice are they embedding. To know all of this, and the food companies particularly interested in all this data, farmers need to be embedded with technology that allows them to collect all this data at farm level and then aggregate all this data in an analytical way throughout the supply chain. And just to give you a little bit more about this is, well, seems easy, but how do we provide a technology that allows farmers to become digital and to collect this data? What we have seen in our 7 years of experience in digitalizing food supply chain is that there are some specific topics, but one in particular is that the technology that we provide to farms and to farmers must be extremely simply to use, super simple to be used. So one aspect must be mobile. All farmers have a smartphone in their pocket, so it must be mobile first, so you need to use it from the smartphone, and must be super simple to be used because we want to collect even few data, but they must be very, very precise. So yeah, that's I believe it's one of the key aspects. Yeah, thank you. I don't have a, let me say, I stop here and then I come back for the next one. I don't know. Benjamin is talking in mute. Huh?
Ben, you're muted.
Sorry, apologies. I was muted there for a second. I forgot. Speaking about technology, that's a fail on my side for using technology. Ferhat, over to you. You have anything to add for us there to that question?
Yeah. We all know that everything that is measured can be managed as well. So technology has an essential role in our ability to understand the environment, adapt to climate change, and mitigate its risks, and support the decision-making process. Tridge is a platform that collects and processes that data to generate insights that support thousands of suppliers and buyers, including farmers, in making data-driven decisions and overcoming the uncertainty of agri-food business change. Tridge's recent network of suppliers through our employees around the world aggregates the information that continuously improves the quality of the insights provided and supports companies in the whole food system for transition to more productive, sustainable, and climate resilient supply chain, actually.
All right, thank you. I thank you both for answering that question. I also functioned on the primary production side of agriculture for a few years before I joined Tridge, and we used tons of technological innovations to be more sustainable, or be more efficient. That leads to sustainability at the end of the day, from precision spray applications to precision fertigation, fertilizer application, chemical corrections of soil. The more efficient you become through the use of technology, the less you waste, the less you pollute the soil, the less you pollute your water. So I've firsthand seen how technological innovations in agriculture can lead to massive efficiency improvement, but also improvements in sustainability without even having a direct focus on sustainability. So technology definitely has a positive impact on agriculture in general, I think. Let's move on to our next question. So how can digital transformation be applied in the agricultural supply chain? Givoanni, you mind going first again?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. I'll build up on what you just said because I believe it's very interesting. We also noticed that this aspect. Usually, what happens in the project that we follow is that the food supply chain is so much interested in the data and the sustainability that rollouts the project, let me say, paying for his farmers. So they actually invest on it. But just to give you an example, we work with several food supply chains in Europe, and what they're interested in mainly is, from a sustainability point of view, reducing their greenhouse emissions, because they usually compensate the carbon that they emit, so they want to pay less on carbon credits that they buy. Making this project, rolling out this project on a food supply chain allows them to reduce the emission coming from the agricultural inputs at a cost that is much, much lower than the one that they are paying today for buying carbon credits. So it's an investment for them. But then it comes to the point that Ben was doing, that is a win-win approach. So the farmers, thanks to this technology, become more efficient. So they save money in what they're doing because they use less fertilizer, thanks to precision agriculture, because they use less water, because they can use less pesticides and so on. So it's saving money for the farmers. And again, this translates directly in a better sustainability of the entire system. Based on this, what we do is basically we start with food supply chain. Let's take, for example, Lavazza, one of the most famous coffee producer, and they want to roll out the project in South America. How do we implement it? There are two key aspects. One we mentioned just before, it's the availability and ease of use of the technology. So we need to provide a simple to use technology so that farmers can use it and be able to use it. The other key aspect relates to the fact that this is a digital transformation project. And like all digital transformation project, is about change management, and it's about overcoming the normal resistance that people can have in implementing a new technology and changing the way they work. So the majority of food digital transformation projects in last years have failed, to be honest. Not on our side, but what we have seen in the market is that many of them didn't reach the results that they were expecting. And why this is because it's really difficult to reach at the farmers level and to involve them with key aspects. So what we found out is that a good way that made us work with several companies is that we invest many hours in ground training and ground involvement of farmers. So it means we go to farmers' side, we involve them. And as usual, like for any other digital transformation project, what you need to do is you need to create a path, so multi-year path, where you start with what we call champions. Champions are the farmers that are most addicted to technology, younger, that are willing to engage in this project. And champions will become our sponsor in the second year and the third year when we roll out the project to additional farmers. So I'll give you later an example, but just to recap, it's first year project, few farms called champions, and a lot of training in the farm, a lot of training, a lot of involvement of farmers. Second year, we enlarge the farmer base, and champions become our sponsor in order to make it effective on others by explaining how they took advantage of this technology. And third year is roll out to the entire supply chain, and this is connected to the way food companies engage with farmers. So usually it's about the product policies that they have with farmers, which means that this becomes one of the rules of the production protocol that farmer needs to be followed. So not only producing a potato, for example, but producing potato and data collected in a platform.
Yeah, thank you. I can definitely attest to the fact that farmers are quite resistant to technological change, slow to adapt for sure. It can be a headache. It can be a headache, especially convincing previous generations to change their ways. Ferhat, over to you. How can digital transformation be applied in the agricultural supply chain?
Yeah, Ben. Yeah, well, lots of tech companies are currently working with both farms and corporations to build an operational structure to support the transition of food systems with the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence technologies, including embedded finance in their platforms, which is a key supporting to the adoption of technology and sustainable practices that accelerate the transition towards more productive and sustainable and climate resilient food systems. On the other side, secure digital documentation system for cross-border trading is hot topic these days, which would increase the trading security and efficiency. It is expected that in the near future, supply chain standards will be upgraded with the sustainability measures we take today. So early birds can be determined as lucky. So we strongly advise farmers to adopt this technology as soon as possible.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to our case studies. So both of you have case studies and examples for us of sustainable practices and sustainability in the agricultural sector. Givoanni, do you mind if I ask you to go first again?
Sure, no problem. I'll speak about a European case that we've been working with an Italian company that is called Barilla. Barilla, you might know, is one of the most important pasta producer in the world. But we've been working with them in the biscuits sector. So they also produce biscuits under a brand name called Molino Bianco. And its particular brand of product mainly focused on sustainability. So you'll see that in all their packages, there is a sustainable agriculture indication. That means that farmers have been following sustainable practice driven by Barilla. And I speak about a little bit about the story of this product. So they started by making a collaboration with the WWF in order to understand what can be the best practices that allow to enhance biodiversity and allow to enhance carbon footprint reduction. And this practice have been streamlined to all the farmers through regulations. So farmers that want to produce soft wheat for the biscuits of Barilla have to follow these rules. What has happened in the last 4 years is that we've been working with them in order to make this fully digital and to provide farmers all the technology in order to further reduce their carbon footprint. And as I was mentioning before, this has been a project rolling out in 3 years. So we took 3 years in order to reach the entire farmers. We're talking about 2,600 farmers in all Europe. How did it work? So the first year we started with 10 farms. We provided them both the software, so xFarm technology software, which, by the way, maybe I'll write it down in the chat. If you want to download xFarm application, that comes for free, so with a freemium approach, so you can download it for free and start using it. But okay, we provided the xFarm app to all the farmers, to the 10 farmers at the beginning, and we also provided IoT technology that was mentioned before. IoT technology means weather station and soil sensors that are able to provide more precise data to farmers and also work on algorithms. So provide data to algorithms that allow farmers to understand better what's the risk of a disease or what's the need of water or whatever else. These 10 farmers became our champions, and second year we moved from 10 to 150, providing something like 200 hours of training to all of them in order to ensure that everybody was on board, able to use this technology in the best possible way. And at the beginning of the second year was announced that this would have become a mandatory rule in order to provide soft wheat to Barilla. So all farmers from the next year would have been obliged, let me say, of one of the rules of the protocol was to provide also this data. So last year was third year, we have been involving with 1,600 farmers, And again, it's all about making training. It's all about providing them the right support 24/7 so that they can use this technology at their advantage and also at food companies' advantage. Last point is about the financials of this. Maybe I'll speak also a little bit about this. So Barilla engaged the farmers and streamlined this project in two ways. First of all, the project was fully funded by Barilla, so the tool, the IoT, and everything was paid by the food company. And as I was saying before, this is much less than the cost paid by purchasing carbon credits. And the second part is that the wheat produced in a sustainable way has a premium price with respect to the market price of wheat. So there is a plus 6% price that is provided to farmers that are willing to produce wheat with these sustainable regulations. And yeah, I hope this example explains a little bit how we work and how we can streamline a digital transformation project. But I'll be happy to answer the questions then.
Yeah, thanks, Giovanni. Sounds like a very successful project there, and sounds like xFarm is a great product to incorporate in there. So thank you very much for that. Ferhat, do you have an example for us, case study?
Yeah, well, just like Giovanni's project, there are some companies in Turkey as well. And these are smart agriculture companies in group. And digital agriculture provides convenience to its user in many ways, such as weather values, weather anomalies, advices for irrigation and fertilizer amount, early warning for diseases and pests, and choosing the right crop according to their soil and climate conditions. And there has been a pilot region chosen in 2020 in Aydın city in Turkey. And this company has laid out their probes and sensors in this pilot region, and after a year shared the efficiency publicly, which was 20%, which means irrigation plant and animal production costs have been reduced by 20% in this pilot region. So definitely it's a proven technology, and day by day adopting by huge amount of companies and organizations. So we can call it's the future of agriculture, actually, Ben.
Yeah, I definitely, I think it's very clear from today's presentation that improvements in agriculture is primarily driven by technological advancements. And as we see with Europe's sustainability goals, technology will play a massive role in reaching those goals, and making efficiency improvements in agriculture and allowing us to monitor how we improve, providing us data to improve even further. So thank you very much for our panelists for your contributions. Bojan, thank you very much for the presentation. I hope that we would still have a chance to have a Q&A session, take some questions from the chat, but unfortunately we have run out of time. Again, Giovanni, thank you very much from xFarms for joining us and making a positive contribution to this discussion. It sounds like you guys are making some positive contributions to the agricultural industry as well. So thank you for that. Just on a final note, we would like to announce one of our new services here at Tridge. We recently opened up our platform and newsletter to advertising, and it's a really great way to get direct access to over 500,000 monthly users, monthly Tridge.com users, as well. Sorry, so we have many suppliers, importers, wholesalers, retailers, institutes, and other great organizations in the food industry that's actively using Tridge. So it's a powerful channel to reach these types of profiles. So if this sounds interesting, we will be sending this presentation to you later, and you can get into contact with our sales team for more information, or you can visit our website. So again, thank you very much. This presentation will be sent to all participants in the next, say, 2-3 days. And because we didn't get to the questions, we will answer all questions in chat and follow up in an email with answers to all of your questions. So thank you very much again for everybody for joining us. And there's also a survey will be sent out that you can complete to provide us with some feedback. And if you want an attendance certificate, please complete that survey for us, and we can send that attendance certificate to you. So thank you for all our presenters, our panelists, and everybody for joining us today. Greetings from South Africa, and greetings from Tridge.